Bonjour, 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 mon petit cabbage, etc. Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. Welcome. Do not feel as though you've stumbled into the wrong classroom. This isn't French with Max, this is history with Max. However, we do have a slight French lean here today, as is testament by my red, white and blue and my little jaunty beret up here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jan. Good morning, good morning. Joseph's joined the house. I can see danger lurking in the doorway, as always. Do come in. There's Charlie coming in too. Pens and paper. Yes, bonjour, bonjour, Monsieur Max. Absolument. C'est pas nécessaire. Parlez-vous en français? But if you fancy it, have a go. Hello, bonjour from Izzy. Hello, hello, hello. As I say, we are here in our red, white and blue and our jaunty berets because we are talking today about the French Revolution. Arguably, one of the most important moments in human history, people. This is a big, big one today. You'll also notice that my classroom is rather different here today because we've been having a bit of the old internet problems. I thought we'd give it a go elsewhere and see if things are slightly better. Charlie's cousins live in France. Zut alors, Charlie. Bonjour et bienvenue to your cousins if they're watching over in La Belle France. We're going to give it a few more minuit, as they say en France, before we launch into things. Everybody, tell me what you've been up to. Fill me in, as you know, and I say it often. I live vicariously through you all. Bon matin, indeed, Drew. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Drew. Hello to Ethan and Jamie. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Joseph is now jeté. Is that a French word? I don't know. My French is very, very limited. I can ask the way to the beach in very loud voices, but that's about it. Tomorrow is Ayan's birthday. I know. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on Friday, we will be having a little birthday party for Ayan here at the Up All Hours Academy, specifically in the history lessons. I will be wearing appropriately festive attire, and we will be celebrating a birthday, which is very exciting. Playing Horrible History's Monopoly. Izzy, I didn't know that existed. That sounds like my dream, I have to say. Keep your names coming in so I can give you all a hello. Hello, Joseph's giving me a little wave there. Welcome, Joseph. Lovely to have you. Actually, I've got some ambiance. Everything's very French today, isn't it? And I thought we could just have a bit of... Hello, 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 hello. Oui, bien sûr. We have rocketed to France in the 1700s. It is where we will be discussing the following subject, lesson 14, and that is the French Revolution. I'm going to stop there before the French embassy get on the line and have a go at me. Exactly, it is the best music from the famous television show Allo Allo, which is absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't watched it, please jump over after the lesson and go and watch it. It is absolutely hilarious. Good morning to the Gannies. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So yes, I think perhaps in place of the bell, we'll just have a little bit more of hello, hello. Hello, 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 welcome to history. So yes, that will be in place of the bell. Okay, so class is now in session. Welcome to you all. It's lovely to have you here. So, as I say, new classroom, yes, that's basically it, really, new classroom. Let's see how it works out. If anyone has any problems, shout out. Now, this is a big subject. A very, very, very exciting subject. It's one of my favourites. It came in as a request by several of you, actually. So I was very, very touched. And I want you to ask as many questions as you can because it is, as I say, quite a meaty subject. The French Revolution started in 1789 and ended in 1799. So nice and rounded numbers there. And but we're going to go back a bit further just so you get a full flavour of what was going on. So, as you know, we start every single lesson with the ubiquitous things to remember, with the rolling of the R's as well, just to keep things interesting. As I said, in my opinion, the French Revolution is arguably the most important event in human history. It changed absolutely everything. I genuinely believe that if you were to look at some of the major events that came up in the 1800s, even the 1900s, maybe even as far into the 2000s, perhaps, who knows? Actually, the 1900s. Let's not go too far, Max. Let's not go overexcited. Everything can be traced back, really, to this fantastic event. Modern-day America would not exist without France, and as we will find out, that was a major cause for the French Revolution. Someone's asking when it started. It started in 1789 and it finished very abruptly, as we will discover, in 1799. So 1789 to 1799. Things to remember. 1700s, the 18th century in Europe was nasty. Now, how many of my lessons have I started with the state of affairs being nasty? Things were really rather bad in Europe. Europe had been wrecked by constant warfare, literally constant warfare, for nearly 100 years. Revolutions were sweeping across Europe in some of those famous old countries that we've spoken about in the past. The Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time, much more, you'd probably know it better as Austria. There was no real combination with Hungary. And German principalities and kingdoms, they'd all had revolutions as well. Hello, Mac. Welcome. So yes, Europe was very much in a state of danger and awareness. That's another thing I want you to remember. There was a lot of awareness at the time. People were looking at their kings and their emperors and going, now hang on a minute. Why do you get all of this and I get absolutely nothing? There was a lot of talk. They're becoming aware of their horrid position in life. And they wanted something different. There were new ideas flying around about democracy. In an empire, in a kingdom, how dare you? Ideas about democracy and human rights and the fact that everybody should really be as equal as possible. It doesn't make sense for a tiny little population at the top to have everything and for us to have nothing. All these ideas were flying around. And these dangerous and scary ideas, if you were a king, a queen, or an emperor, they were enshrined, they were made real by the United States of America. And they turned around and rather rudely, if you ask me, said, we want independence from you, Britain. And they declared independence, as we know, for various reasons. But as I always say, revolutions start for one of three reasons, or a combination of the three: hunger, lack of money, and more commonly, but in a much lesser sense, in my opinion, a realization that things need to change. So I always think that hunger, money, and a realization that things need to change very much influence revolutions. Worth remembering that, I think. So the USA founded themselves as a democratic republic in 1776, and Britain they'd lost a major part of their empire to a new democratic idea. And the Revolutionary War, which kicked off in 1776, America's attempt to become independent from Britain, kicked off and France, who, as we know, spent 1,000 years at war with Britain, decided, in an attempt just to really stick in the knife, to have a go at Britain. And so France spent huge amounts of money to supply the American rebels. They provided soldiers and warships and financial funding. And it was all really just to stick it to Britain. France is one of the oldest monarchies in Europe. It's been around for 1,000 years. The French monarchy had been around for 1,000 years. So why were they supporting these American independence people who were trying to, throw away everything that the French monarchy stood for to stick it to Britain? So France spent huge amounts of money in order to defend the American rebels' rights. The three things that cause revolution, in my opinion, is hunger, lack of money, and a realization that things need to change. There are obviously other things that feature. But if you think about the Russian Revolution and the French Revolution, that was very much spurred on by hunger. Bread riots preceded both of them. In France, as we'll see, there was a huge financial crisis. That triggered a revolution. And a realization that things need to change. But usually it's one of the first two that trigger the third. It's my own little opinion. And something else I'd like you to remember. The USA only exists today because of France's massive support for American independence. They spent huge amounts of money in order to prop up the American rebels. And that's something that's overlooked, I think, in American history. Obviously, there's huge patriotism around the War of Independence, but I think people sometimes forget just how much France did. Hello, I can't remember your name, but you've just joined in. Pull up a pew, pens and paper down. So let's talk about the run-up. King Louis XVI, and that's in Roman numerals, if you're interested. That's XVI, so Louis XVI, King of France, head of the House of Capet, Capet, and he's sitting on the throne in his big fancy pantaloons and powdered wigs. And I want you to understand that France was hugely backward. It was very much behind many of the other countries. It was certainly behind Britain at this point, who was working towards a much more, equal state. And so France was incredibly backward. It had something that was known as the Ancien Regime, the ancient regime. They very much clung to principles from those 1,000 years. They didn't change a huge amount. And only the lower and middle classes paid tax. Only. So the aristocracy, the nobles, and the clergy, the church, didn't pay any tax towards the upkeep of this massive French empire as it was. Ambrose, of course it's Ambrose, hello. 5 indeed does equal 5. V does indeed equal 5, you're quite right. So XVI, 10, 5, 1. So Louis the 16th. So the lower and middle classes are paying all the tax. The nobles and the church are paying no tax whatsoever. And another thing that led up to the maybe we'll do the Russian Revolution, it's obviously on my brain. Another thing that led up to the French Revolution was this massive support of the American rebels. They gave such a huge amount of money that it effectively bankrupted France. They reached a point where they literally could not get the money back that they'd sent. The 1700s, as I said, had continuous war, continuous revolution, and that meant that populations across Europe were massively down. All these armies marching across to go and batter each other to hell and back meant that there were very few men to farm the land. So there were incredibly poor harvests across the 1700s. And the price of bread, as I said, the three things that lead to revolution. The price of bread went sky high, rocketed, to the extent that your poor Parisian had absolutely no option but to make his bread with half dough and half sawdust. 50% of bread loaves in France at this time were made out of 50% dough and 50% sawdust. There was a huge crisis brewing in France. So what did the king and the court do? What did they do? They raised taxes on the poor. So you've got your poor individual who can't make any money, who's cutting his bread with sawdust, and the king turns around and says, you need to pay more money. There was no social understanding. They weren't sort of saying to each other, oh, we must make things better in the countryside. No, they raised taxes in order to continue fighting the British. That's all they cared about. There was no understanding about what was going on. So that money that they raised from additional taxes in the 1780s it wasn't going to looking after your poor peasant in the fields. It went towards building warships and armies. And I saw that Danger asked earlier on, how much money did the French send to the Americans? We can't calculate it. It was so much. And, numerically speaking, it was X amount. But it's also the fact that they were sending their own soldiers, their own navy over there to help fight the British on behalf of America. So the numbers are vast. So remember as well that it's only the poor who are the ones paying for these new taxes. The wealthy aristocrats and the wealthy church weren't paying anything. The quiz is going to be hard. Well, maybe. I don't think so. You're all very, very good. France was in serious, serious trouble, people. They were things were starting to fall apart. And what was happening at the top? What was happening at the government level? The royal family and the court, which is effectively the government, were all at the Palace of Versailles. Now, you'll remember Versailles from our World War I lesson. Versailles is a massive palace outside of Paris. And the royal family and the court were sitting around Versailles on their big powdered bottoms, and they were playing games, they were eating like pigs, and they were totally out of tune with the hell that was being suffered by your everyday Frenchman. The royal family spent no time in Paris by this point. They had no connection with their people. It's like the royal family we have today in Britain, spending all of their time at Windsor and no time at Buckingham Palace. There was a lot of anger. Absolutely, we've got lots of people here. Marie Antoinette, thank you for bringing her up, Izzy. I was about to come on to her. She was the Austrian sister of the Austrian emperor. And she was Queen of France. She'd married Louis. And she was seen... She never said, let them eat cake. Let me just make that very, very clear. She never said, in response to these poor people being unable to eat proper bread, she never said, let them eat bread. That was a myth that was put around after the revolution in order to enhance this idea of us and them. So things were not going very well. The royal family were totally disconnected. The government was totally disconnected. There were a few very clever chaps who were trying to pull together some kind of financial care package for the poor, but it was ignored. And the king was getting rid of his government, his ministers who disagreed with him, left, right, and centre. So what happens when you reach breaking point? When you're poor and you're starving, you start to riot, you start to smash things, you set things on fire, and you shout about how bad things are for you. They were smashing things up, setting things on fire, and they demanded that the king and government actually do something rather than just raise taxes. So what did the king do? He raised taxes, but not, as is often reported, on just the aristocracy and the clergy, the nobles and the church. He introduced a universal tax, so that for the first time the nobles and the clergy were paying tax, but that tax also affected your poor peasant. Zucchini bread with the big one on my side, and then we'll see the rest of it next day. Oh, okay. Maybe you're making zucchini bread. Good luck to you. So yes, we introduced in 1786 this new universal tax, which was absolutely ridiculous. But it did mean that finally the clergy and the aristocracy were being taxed, but so were the poor on top of all the other taxes. And if you can believe it, those big, fat, useless nobles of France in the 1700s actually got together around their fireplaces and said, I don't like this. This isn't right. We're going to rebel as well. We're going to fight the king. This isn't right. We shouldn't pay taxes. We're rich. The only reason we're rich is because we don't pay taxes. Can you believe it? Can you imagine that the rich were actually going to revolt against the king because they had to pay tax. It's absolutely laughable, but this is the French Revolution, people, and it only gets weirder from here on in. Do they know they have no money? Well, the majority of France, as we know, were made up of very poor peasants working in the countryside. They wouldn't have known to what extent what trouble they were in, but they would have known that things were pretty bad. Hello, Joe. Oh, my dear old Joe's joined. Hello, darling. How are you? Lovely to see you. Everyone okay? Because I've now come to my heading in my notes. Things kick off. Right? Everyone okay with the run-up, with the lunacy? France is bankrupt. Its army has been sent overseas. There's no money. They're raising taxes on the poor. The rich are getting angry because they now have to pay taxes after 1,000 years of not paying the damn things. I mean, it's absolutely laughable. But everyone okay with that tornado effect of danger for the ancien regime? Joseph's okay, and I think we've got Ian's giving me a yep, excellent. I will say a little happy birthday to you at the end, Ian, because your birthday is tomorrow, but we'll be celebrating on Friday. Danger's got it. Everyone's okay. Excellent, marvellous. So things kick off. King Louis was desperate. So what he decided to do was, Marie didn't even think she was doing anything bad. You're right. Yes, that's another thing. That difference between understanding. The fact that the royal family genuinely felt that there was nothing wrong. It was quite crazy. Now, this is the only complicated bit of the French Revolution. So just bear with me and we'll get through it quickly, but I would like you to remember it. Quick slurp. Izzy's giving me a laugh. Jolly good. Right. So Louis, absolutely desperate. He needed to get the support. His loyal nobles were now rumbling and saying, you, and the peasants were burning down the countryside, and there were riots and strikes in Paris. So Louis got desperate. So he decided to make things better by bringing the country together into an assembly. Representatives of the countryside and the city and the nobles and the clergy would all come together. Now, that assembly was called the États Généraux. In English, much easier, the Estates General. E-S-T-A-T-E-S, Estates General, G-E-N-E-R-A-L, the Estates General. So as I said, it was an assembly of all the representatives of France. The first estate, because that's what you referred to it as, the first estate was the clergy, the second estate was the nobility, and the third estate was the middle class. Not the lower class. They still believed at that time that people didn't have the right, if you were in the lower classes, to represent yourself. Again, feudalism. Remember we spoke about feudalism? That triangle. You've got the peasants, then you've got the nobility and the clergy, and then you've got the king. That was still very much in effect in France. So number one, the clergy. Number two, the nobility. And the third estate were the middle classes. 90% of the Estates General were made up not of the nobility. The nobility only made up 2% of the Estates General. And that wasn't good for the king and the nobility. They wanted some serious representation here. They were very, very unhappy. Ian, the first one is the clergy. The second one is the nobility. And the third one is the middle class. So only 2% of the Estates General was made up of the nobility. 98% were made up of the middle classes and the clergy. However, the 2% at the top had the ability to veto, to say no to anything that the 98% said. Now, what does that say about France in the 1780s? Laughable, if you ask me. And there was huge anger at this. They could not believe that after all these years, as someone rightly pointed out, 100 years since the last Estates General, they could not believe that the shift in power had happened, and yet the middle class and the lower orders had no say in what was happening in their country. So the third estate, the middle class, went, right, enough of you, we've had enough. And they decided to hold their own meeting against the rules of the Estates General. And they went off to a tennis court, an indoor tennis court. And they declared the tennis court oath. That's what it's known as. And the tennis court oath, sworn on a actual indoor tennis court, they swore that they would not go away. They would not be made to be quiet until something happened. Something had to change, they were saying. Why have this 2% been allowed to tell us to shut up when we are the majority, we the people, which, as we know, was being said in America. They were looking at this country they'd created and they were going, well, why can't we have that? For crying out loud, Louis! God, pull your head out of your bum. So they swore the tennis court oath on a tennis court, and they said they're not going away. They created something called the National Assembly, and this was represented. They were representative of all those who believed that France needed to change. That's the complicated bit. Okay, I put a big mark next to this little bit about the Estates General. Everyone okay with how that worked? It was groundbreaking. As Thomas pointed out, it was the first one in 100 years. It was exciting. People were excited about it. They thought maybe we'll have a chance to have a say in the country that we live in. And they were bitterly disappointed and in the end had to go to the government and bring their own decisions, the tennis court oath and the creation of the National Assembly. Everyone okay? Yeah. Thumbs up from Danger. Thumbs up from Jamie and Ethan. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me on that one. Louis, old fat King Louis, was very, very scared. He was looking at all of these people who were saying, we're not a big fan of you, Louis, mate, and we're coming for your power. Because Louis genuinely believed, as did most kings and queens at the time, that he was ordained, he was given his position by God, and by God alone, by God, and that no one can touch that power. The divine right of kings, we've spoken about that in previous lessons. So Louis was petrified, and as all tyrants do, at some point, I mean, think of all the famous tyrants that we know in the history of the world. Hitler, Stalin, Voldemort. They all send in their armies. They all end up getting other people to go and sort out their messes. So Louis, scared and resentful for this intrusion upon his power, he did a Voldemort and he called in the army to protect the Palace of Versailles. And he encircled Paris with the army in order to protect his right as king. And the National Assembly and the people saw this and went, that says it all. That says it all. He called the Estates General because he wanted an answer to his problems. He got an answer he didn't want, so he's sending in the thugs to kill us, to put us down, to return to the ancien regime. And as we will see, things really kick off from this point onwards. Did he have a flat nose? I don't know if he had a flat nose. He had an unhealthy obsession with locks, literal keyholes and keys and everything else like that. He used to collect locks. He was a very interesting man, actually, and whilst he was a complete buffoon, I do think that, those were the times, right? And when you've come from 1,000 years of family, 1,000 years of family rule, it's very hard to change your mind. And I think that even us today it's very difficult to change our ways, isn't it? So, the heading in my notes, the Revolution, 1789, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. This is what the revolution was based on, the idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And that's where we are. So we're at the Revolution, 1789. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. His palace was filled with poo. Yes, I mean, it wasn't great. There was plumbing, I believe, but it wasn't perfect. Maybe we'll just leave poo chat there, shall we? So, the revolution finally broke out with Louis sending in the army to try and solidify his position. The Estates General had been ignored. The National Assembly was trying to get things done and nobody was listening to them. The revolutionaries, realizing that they were now at war, went and assaulted a military hospital and stole weaponry. They armed themselves, ready to go. And they attacked the most hated symbol of the Ancien Regime, the ancient regime, which was the prison, the Bastille. You'll have all heard of Bastille, not the band, although they are great, no comment there, but they went and attacked, and the Bastille had been used for centuries to lock up people who didn't agree with the monarchy, with the cuppa and everyone else. So it was a symbol of the Ancien Regime, and they were determined as revolutionaries to tear it down. And the assault on the Bastille happened on the 14th of July, 1789, and there was no one in there. You know, they believed they were going to go and liberate thousands of revolutionaries who perhaps didn't deserve to be in there. But no, there was about 4 or 5 people in there. And you know, it's a big event. It triggered the French Revolution. If you want an easy point to go from. And so some representatives of the revolutionaries went into the Bastille and they sat down with the governor and they went, "Now look here, Gov. We want this place, okay? It's quite an important building. It's got a nice architecture and everything else. We'd like the Bastille, please." And the governor said, "Well, hang on, we'll talk to you about that. You know, we will negotiate." But the negotiations went on for far too long. My beret is slipping. The negotiations went on for far too long, and so the what's the word? The revolutionaries decided to storm the Bastille, as someone has rightly said, Bastille Day, still celebrated today. So the revolutionaries stormed the Bastille. The army who were there, the guards, fired on the crowd, killing 98 revolutionaries who were assaulting the Bastille. However, another battalion from the army had joined the revolutionaries, and they'd come with a massive cannon, and they were firing at the Bastille and everything else, and they finally took the Bastille, as I say, Bastille Day, 14th of July, I believe. Yes, 14th of July, 1789. And they finally took it. And they took this governor who they believed to have been delaying so that more army could turn up. And they took him down to City Hall, beat him up, murdered him, and unfortunately they then cut off his head. And so begun the French obsession during the Revolution of cutting off heads. That was it. That's where it all started, if you like. Everyone okay with that, right? The storming of the Bastille was was a major event, and it was successful. The Parisian Revolution looked to be successful, and this then spread to the countryside. And the whole of France was suddenly in uproar. Everything was on fire. Roving mobs of revolutionaries were beating up tax collectors and members of the nobility and setting fire to their houses and everything else. It was called the Great Fear, the idea that they had to get rid of everybody lest their revolution be squashed at a later date. So looting, murder, fires, all directed at the higher orders. And on the 4th of August, 1789, the National Assembly declared, they signed something called the Declaration of Rights of Man and the Citizen. Very, very similar to the Declaration of Independence by the Americans. It was actually influenced by Thomas Jefferson, and it was an idea that everyone was equal before the law. We've got some glitching going on, I believe. I am sorry. I don't know if it's these lots of these emojis flying around. Maybe that's draining a bit of the internet. I'm not sure. But yes, so the Declaration of Rights and Man and the Citizen was signed on the 4th of August, 1789. It was the rights for all and the doing away with the old order. And it stripped the nobles, those rich, fat aristocrats, of all of their old hereditary rights, making everybody in the eyes of France equal. It didn't work, the Declaration of Independence. Who signed the Declaration of Right? That was signed by the National Assembly, people who were representing France at this point. And then they did the unthinkable in France, the total unthinkable. They got rid of the idea that the king was above the law, that he was appointed only by God. They made him the first servant of the state, stripped him of lots and lots of power, and they made him a constitutional monarch. Now, one thing I want to say is that actually Louis went along with it quite well. He was quite willing to embrace this change by this point. He was in a terrible situation, so he decided to go along with it. He wore a tricolor rosette on his breast and a little tabard on his hat. He was quite happy to go along with it. But the idea was that they've now made him a constitutional monarch, answerable to the people. And this was enormous for the time. But as I say, the king rather went along with it. However, Louis maintained huge sweeping powers. He had the power to appoint his ministers. He had the power to veto. And, you know, for some, that's fair enough. He's a constitutional monarch. He's still king. It doesn't really matter. You know, we've got him in a chokehold and everything else. But for some very, very hardline revolutionaries, it was far, far from enough for the king to maintain any power. Please say hi to Zane, your brother. Hello to Ayan's brother Zane. I do hope that you're preparing a nice surprise for Ayan's birthday tomorrow. So the king still retained these powers. And the hardline revolutionaries said, no way, what on earth are you talking about? No, he shouldn't have any bloomin' power. They said they wanted no king, they wanted no nobility, and they wanted France to become a republic like the USA that they had helped create, as we know. And so they finally, these hardline revolutionaries, agreed to put Louis on trial for his crimes against the people. And this was only made worse by the fact that he and the royal family, they actually one night dressed up as peasants and tried to get out of France to escape this great fear, as I say. It's Joseph's sister's birthday in 6 days. Fantastic. I will definitely give a shout out if that falls on a lesson. So the great fear, as I say, it was the belief that there were counter-revolutionaries across the country. And on top of that, there was a belief that the king was using his relations, the other heads of European monarchies, such as Marie Antoinette's brother, Joseph, the Emperor of Austria. There was a fear that Louis was creating a counter-revolution in order to put his power back in place, which there was certain aspects of that. It wasn't Louis so much as his nobles. But yes, it was a funny old time. So they put Louis on trial for his crimes, fighting against the people. And in the same month, because they realised they'd finally had enough, Louis was put on, the monarchy, was abolished. They got rid of the monarchy and France became a republic at last, ending 1,000 years of the French monarchy. Just let that sink in. 1,000 years of the same unchanging system of government, and it all came to a close in August 1792. Now, say bonjour to the guillotine, or the guillotine, depending on how you want to say it. The guillotine was invented by Monsieur Guillotine, and it was invented because it allowed for mass executions, and it was very, very quick, much quicker than a bloke with an axe. As you know, as it works, it's a big, tall structure, and it's controlled, and you pull a rope, and the blade goes up, and then when you're ready, you let it go, and gravity does its job. It was, in its own way, a remarkable invention, and it completely changed the way things were done. During this time, and we're coming up on the quiz, everyone just bear with me. During the time, in a sick joke, the guillotine was known as the national razor, because it was used on so many people in order to secure this new ideal of revolutionary fervour. Religion was outlawed, and the idea was that people should worship the revolution. What does that sound like? It sounds very much like communism in the 1900s and on. And as I said, I do believe that this idea of revolutionary fervour really influenced so many events further down the line. It's Mac's birthday in 8 days. Fantastic. We'll have a party for that one. Who was the last person to get executed by the guillotine? The guillotine was still being used in France as a system of execution in 1977. That's how long it was being used. I don't know the name of the chap, the last one, but I can find out if you'd like to know. So on the 21st of January, 1793, King Louis XVI of France walked up the steps of the guillotine. He pardoned his executioners. He sort of didn't scream or shout or run around or anything like that. But he was guillotined on the 21st of January, 1793, in front of a vast cheering crowd. His body was put into a plain coffin, and he was buried in a mass grave, because by this point he was known as Citizen Capet. He'd been stripped of all of his titles and he was no longer king. And then several months later, on the 16th of October, 1793, Marie Antoinette finally was executed as well, a symbol of this outrage. The tribute officials were the first person. I can't see, it's just jumped. I can't read that, I'm afraid, but thank you if it's any additional information. What about his kids? We can talk about that at a later date, but there were children that were locked up. They were kept safe because of the idea that there may be, as I say, this coming back of a counter-revolution. But yes, Marie Antoinette was executed on the 16th of October 1793, and on her way to the gallows, she accidentally stepped on her executioner's foot, and her last words were, "Pardon me, sir." And then, after that, the two hated symbols of the Ancien Regime had been killed. France went mad. Absolutely mad. It was known as the Reign of Terror, 1793 to 1794. And the Reign of Terror was this idea... I can't see what your... Go home first. I'm so tired of the battle. I was just thinking about you and Agincourt just a little bit. I was going over. How many questions? There are 10. We're nearly there, don't worry. But yes, the Reign of Terror, 1793 to 1794. And basically, Maximilien Robespierre, that famous revolutionary, was just adamant to squash any kind of challenge to his revolution. And it was absolutely horrendous. They estimate that around 17,000 people were guillotined in that 1 year of terror. And then France just imploded. I mean, it was mad. People, the things that they did to one another in the name of revolution and liberté, égalité, fraternité. It's mad. Liberty and everything else. It's crazy. And then, as we know, France became what she had so hard fought not to be. She fought so hard to overthrow this idea of one people at the top, one person at the top, or a small minority at the top, get rid of feudalism, and they became exactly what they did not want. And in 1799, a small but fantastic general used military means to overthrow the Assembly of France. He used cannon in the streets. It was a coup d'etat, which is basically a coup to overthrow the government. And in 1804, that tiny little general, a fantastic general, but he actually wasn't as short as people assume. He crowned himself emperor in 1804, and his name, as we all know, was Napoleon Bonaparte. After all of that, after everything France had gone through, she ended up being back under the tyrannical boot of a dictator. So that, in a nutshell, was the French Revolution. I hope it was helpful. Someone's pointing out that I'm called Maximilian. I am. I hope I wasn't named after Robespierre. That would be very, very sad indeed. So let's jump into the quiz, which I know you've all been waiting for. Question number 1. Which major event in the 1770s was a major influence or factor on the revolution? Which major event in the 1770s was a major factor on the revolution? I know. I mean, it's why it's the most interesting subject. Wow is indeed correct. He wasn't short, it's just that his guards were really tall. He was short, but by the standards of the time, he wasn't tiny. That was actually put about by the British, that he was short because it was easy to make fun of someone who was challenging you. The American Civil War, no, that was slightly later, but we've got that right from Thomas and by Ian, absolutely. The American Revolution is what we were looking for, 1776, and France throwing all that money across the Atlantic in order to prop them up. If you wrote down the American Revolution, have a team point. Question 2. What was the name and number of the King of France at the time of the Revolution? Well done, Joseph. Well done to the Gannies. Absolutely right. Nearly Izzy. Very nearly. American Revolution. I can understand that it was there's a slight difference between a civil war and a revolution, but, keep it up. You'll get the rest, I'm sure. I think that's danger trying to get revolution out quickly, but that's, that's fine. Callum's come in with the right one. Yes, you don't need to put down the Roman numerals. Absolutely well done. Well done, Izzy. Well done, Ian. Well done to the Gannies. Well done, Thomas. Absolutely, Louis. Yes, we can have Louis. I'll accept Louis. Normally I say put the name and number down, but we'll go with Louis. Louis 16. Well done, everybody. Question 3. True or false, the majority of taxes were paid in France by the clergy and the middle classes. Okay, that's fine. Well done, Danger. Have a team point. Well done to the Gannies. Louis the 16th. It's spelled Louis, but I will accept any spellings along those lines. Don't worry. Autocorrect. Oh, it's a pain, that old autocorrect, isn't it? Falsehood. False. Everyone's got that one right, I can tell. The majority of the taxes, as we know, were paid by the lower and middle classes. The clergy and the nobility paid absolutely diddly squat. Well done, Thomas. Well done, Joseph. Well done, Izzy. Well done, Danger. Quite right. Absolutely right. Question 4. The Estates General were made up of the nobility, the middle classes, and whom? The 3 estates, the nobility, the middle classes, and whom? Who was the... actually, they were the first estate, but, Well done, Danger. Absolutely right. Mac 2, not sure what you're saying there, but that's fine, everyone's free. Liberté to say whatever they like. Right, get your answers in. Who's the third? There we go. I realise I've phrased it in a very difficult way. Well done to Thomas. Well done to Ian. Well done to Callum. Well done to Mac. Absolutely, that was from the last question. Congratulations. Well done. Absolutely. Well done to Izzy. Well done to the Gannies. Absolutely, it was the clergy. Question 5. Where was the National Assembly's oath taken? Where was the National Assembly's oath taken? Well done, Danger. I knew you'd get that one. Don't worry, Izzy. You don't ever have to worry about spelling with me. This isn't English. Don't worry. Absolutely fine. Yes, that's right. The clergy. If you put down clergy, have a team point. You're all doing very well. Someone mentioned earlier on that they thought that the quiz was going to be difficult. I did try and make this slightly more complicated, but I obviously have failed. Well done, Ethan and Jamie. Congratulations. Straight in there, Callum. Absolutely. Well done, Ian. Well done, Thomas. Absolutely. Well done. Well done to the Gannies. Well done to Izzy. Exactly. The tennis court. The tennis court oath. Well done, everybody. Have a team point. The raiding of what kicked off the French Revolution? The raiding of what kicked off the French Revolution? Well done, Joseph. Well done, Danger. Well done, Mac. It's easy peasy. Oh dear. Well, maybe you've just taken incredibly good notes. Maybe we'll do the quiz first on Friday and we'll see just how easy it is. Well done, Callum. Absolutely. Straight in. You don't have to spell it correctly, but you've done beautifully there. Well done. Absolutely. Well done, Thomas. Indeed. Yes. If we can get the band on and play over the quiz, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? Well done, Danger. Well done, well done, well done, well done, Joseph. Congratulations. The Lost Ark. Okay, fine. Yeah, that was very good. I like that one. Bastille, well done, everybody. Well done, Izzy. Well done, Ian. Well done to Jamie and Ethan. Well done to Tom. Well done to the Gannies, etc., etc., etc. Well done. Question 7. Why was the guillotine so popular? Why was the guillotine so popular? Can we do Blackbeard? Interesting choice. Yes, well done, Mac. Absolutely. The Bastille, well done. Don't do the quiz first because it's hard then. Well, that's kind of the point, Joseph. Blimey. Only joking. As I say, the only reason you're finding the quiz so easy is because you're all taking such fantastic notes and you're remembering them. Okay, Callum's come straight in with mass killings. Quite right, because it could mass execute. Well done, Thomas. Quick and easy. Well done to the Gannies. Kill lots. Well done, Coxie. Absolutely, because it was faster than using an axe. Well done, I am absolutely right. Mass killings was what we were looking for. Sorry, it's a bit grim, but that is why it became so popular. Just checking the time. We've got to hurry up a bit. Question 8. Up until the Revolution, how many years had France had a monarchy? Up until the Revolution, for how many years had France had a monarchy? Well done, Izzy. Well done, Joseph. Absolutely right. Very, I think that's Ambrose there, coming straight in with a very. I think that's in response to very quick killings. My beret's going all of a flutter. Yes, for how many years before the Revolution had France had a monarchy? Callum is straight in there, as is Thomas, as is Danger. Well done, well done, well done, well done. Exactly, Ian. Well done, Ambrose. Yes, that's the thing. Slightly OTT there, Joseph, but, I know what you're aiming at. Well done, Mac. Well done to the Gannies. And well done, Izzy. Exactly 1,000 years of French monarchy. And they did come back. Don't worry. The French monarchy did come back several times, in fact. Lots, well done. 1 trillion, maybe. How many people were executed during the Reign of Terror is question 9. How many people were executed during the Reign of Terror? Question 9. Get that in there. 1,000, 1,000 years. I think that's what you're talking about there, Joseph. Well done. We're glitching, apparently. Terribly sorry about that. Hang on in there. Question 9, how many people executed during the Reign of Terror? Maybe everyone's gone. Perhaps the glitching's reached so bad. Not quite, Joseph, no. Not quite, Coxie, no. Ooh, I knew I'd get you on one of them, didn't I? I knew I'd get you. No, I'm afraid not. The 98 that you're all quoting, they were killed during the raiding of the Bastille. I'm looking for how many people were executed during the Reign of Terror in that 1 year of terror, and the answer was 17,000 people. Bad luck, everybody. I think perhaps the notes failed you there, but yes, don't worry. That's only 1 out of 10. And finally, question 10, the revolution failed. Why? The revolution failed. Why? And then once you've given me your answer in the same... Well done, Thomas. Absolutely right. Well done, Jamie and Ethan. That's 100% right. Well done indeed. Excellent. Well done, well done, well done. Yes, 17,000 people. And question 10, the revolution failed. Why? And then we shall all say toodaloo to one another until next time. But I want to know how you all did in the quiz. I want to see your reasons for the revolution failing. Look at the top. I didn't know. Don't know. Well done, Ian. That's what we were looking for. Absolutely. 100%. It was the idea that Napoleon came in and basically stripped away everything that they'd done during the revolution. No idea. Not a problem. That's fine. But yes, well done, Thomas. Absolutely. Well done, Izzy. Well done, well done, well done. And excellent stuff, Danger. Mysteries from Joseph. Yes, I suppose so. Well done to the Gannies. And well done, Coxie. Exactly on his horse. Can't remember his horse's name now. Okay, everybody. I'm going to rush off now. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining me. If you want to share your quiz scores, then do, send me the old message whenever you fancy. That's not a problem. All right for Ayan. Well done. Didn't doubt it. Have a wonderful, wonderful birthday tomorrow, Ayan. We will all be thinking of you, I'm sure. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today at the Up All Hours Academy, and I shall see you all. I'm looking forward to it immensely on Friday. Au revoir, mon ami!